The average American spends over $2,000 a year on coffee, and most of them can't tell you the difference between a cortado and a macchiato. That's not a knock. The coffee menu at any halfway serious cafe reads like a foreign language exam, and nobody ever hands you a guide. But here's the thing. Every single drink on that menu follows a logical system. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's one ingredient at the center of almost every coffee drink you've ever ordered, and once you understand what it does, every other drink suddenly makes sense. That ingredient is espresso, and this is how the whole world of coffee actually works. Let's start with the number that puts this all in perspective. Right now, today, humans around the world will drink 2.25 billion cups of coffee. Not this week, not this month, today. The global coffee market hit $269 billion in 2024 and is on track to reach $369 billion by 2030. Coffee isn't a morning habit. It's one of the most consumed substances on the planet, and yet most people ordering drinks at a counter have only a vague sense of what's actually in the cup. So let's fix that, starting at the very beginning. Espresso, the engine of almost everything. It was invented in 1901 in Milan by a man named Luigi Bizzarra, who was trying to figure out how to speed up his workers' coffee breaks, which, when you think about it, is darkly funny given how central coffee breaks have become to work culture globally. Finland actually mandates 2 paid coffee breaks per workday by law, and Finnish workers consume an average of 12 kilograms of coffee beans per person per year. That's roughly 4 cups a day, every single day, for an entire nation. But back to Bizzarra. He patented a machine that forced hot water through finely ground coffee under pressure. His business partner Desiderio Pavoni bought the patent, refined it, and the machine debuted publicly at the 1906 Milan International Fair. The word espresso literally means pressed out in Italian. The shot itself follows a tight formula. 18 grams of ground coffee goes in, around 36 grams of liquid comes out, in 25 to 30 seconds, at 9 bars of pressure. That's it, that's the foundation. Everything else is what you build on top of it. Take the ristretto. Same grounds, half the water. The output drops from 36 grams down to 18 to 22 grams. Why does that matter? Because espresso extraction isn't uniform. The first phase pulls the sweetest, most aromatic compounds, and the later phase pulls bitter ones. A ristretto captures only that first stage. The result is sweeter, fruitier, and more concentrated than a standard espresso. It's the drink that serious espresso people tend to order when they want to show they know what they're doing. The lungo goes in the opposite direction. Longer pull, more water, somewhere between 50 and 70 grams in the cup. More bitter per sip. Higher total caffeine. And here's something most people get wrong. A lungo is not the same thing as an Americano. A lungo is brewed longer, which means the water passes through the grounds. An Americano adds water after the fact. That distinction matters more than it sounds, because over-extraction produces different flavor compounds than dilution does. They taste different. And if you've been ordering one thinking it's the other, now you know. The Americano has one of the more entertaining origin stories in coffee history. During World War II, American soldiers stationed in Italy found the local espresso way too intense. They were used to the weak drip coffee back home, and a straight shot of Italian espresso was a shock to the system. Italian baristas started diluting espresso with hot water to make it more palatable for the Americans, and they called it café all'americana, essentially coffee the American way, and not entirely as a compliment. The ratio is roughly 1/3 espresso to 2/3 hot water in a 6-ounce cup. The GIs brought the concept home without knowing the nickname. That drink is now one of the most ordered coffees in the United States. Now we get into milk drinks, and this is where most people's mental map breaks down. Because a latte, a cappuccino, a flat white, a macchiato, and a cortado all sound interchangeable until you understand what actually separates them. It comes down to 2 things: the ratio of espresso to milk, and what state that milk is in. The latte is the most forgiving of the group, 1 part espresso to 4 or 5 parts steamed milk, served in an 8 to 12 ounce cup, with a thin layer of microfoam, less than 1 centimeter, sitting on top. That microfoam is velvety, almost liquid, which is why it's the go-to canvas for latte art. Here's the fact that trips people up every time. In Italian, latte just means milk. Walk into a cafe in Rome, order a latte, and the barista will hand you a glass of cold milk. That's it. No coffee. The full name in Italy is caffè latte. The word alone means nothing except the white stuff from a cow. The cappuccino operates on a completely different philosophy. Equal thirds: espresso, steamed milk, and foam. Real foam, thick foam, foam that should sit over 2 centimeters deep on top of a 5 to 6 ounce cup. The name comes from the Capuchin friars, a Catholic religious order whose brown robes were the exact color of espresso lightened with a small amount of milk. The drink was named after their habit. That detail alone makes the morning cappuccino feel slightly more ceremonial. The flat white occupies the space between a latte and a cappuccino, smaller than a latte at 5 to 6 ounces, with ultra-thin microfoam and a stronger, more coffee-forward flavor. And it comes with one of the most unresolved disputes in the coffee world. Australia and New Zealand have been fighting over who invented it since the 1980s, and neither country has definitively won. The earliest Australian documentation is a Sydney Café review from May 1983. New Zealand's claim traces back to a Wellington bar in 1989, where a barista allegedly served what he described as a failed cappuccino, with no foam, and called it a flat white. The debate is, genuinely, legally unresolved. Both countries still claim it. Order one in either place and you'll feel the pride radiating from behind the counter. The macchiato means stained in Italian. Specifically, espresso stained with just a dot of steamed milk. It's the most espresso-forward milk drink on the menu. The ratio is roughly 2 parts espresso to 1 part milk, and the milk is there purely to soften the edge, not to add volume or sweetness. What Starbucks sells as a macchiato, the layered, sweet, milk-heavy drink, bears almost no resemblance to what that word actually means. That's not a complaint, it's just worth knowing. If you order a macchiato at a specialty coffee shop, expect something small, dark, and serious. The cortado comes from Spain. The name means cut, as in, the milk cuts the acidity of the espresso. It's served in a small 4 to 5 ounce glass, at a 1-to-1 ratio of espresso to milk, with flat steamed milk and no foam at all. More milk than a macchiato, less than a flat white. No sweetness added, no foam to soften the texture, just espresso and warm milk in perfect balance. It's one of the most underrated drinks on any coffee menu, and if you've never had one, fix that. The mocha deserves more credit than it usually gets. Most people think of it as just a chocolate latte, which is fair, espresso, steamed milk, chocolate, but the chocolate connection isn't a marketing invention. The city of Mocha in Yemen was the center of the global coffee trade from the 16th century through the 19th century, and the coffee beans exported from there were naturally described as having chocolatey, earthy notes. The name of the drink is literally the name of that port city. The first recorded combination of coffee and chocolate in print dates to 1892, and the flavor pairing has never really gone out of fashion. The affogato is arguably the most dramatic coffee drink in existence. Affogato means drowned in Italian, and the whole concept is a hot shot of espresso poured directly over a scoop of vanilla ice cream. As the espresso hits the cold ice cream, it creates a sauce, bitter, hot, sweet, cold, all at once. In Italy, it's served as a dessert course, not a coffee course. In the US, it lives somewhere between drink and dessert and doesn't fully fit either category. Order it anyway. Now cold coffee, and this is a category that has grown faster than almost any other segment in the American coffee market over the last decade. Cold brew is not iced coffee. Iced coffee is hot brewed coffee poured over ice. It works, but the ice dilutes it, and the heat creates certain acidic compounds during brewing that stick around. Cold brew skips that entirely. The grounds steep in cold water for 12 to 24 hours, which produces a concentrate that is 60 to 70% less acidic than hot brewed coffee. The flavor is smoother, the bitterness drops dramatically, and the concentrate is potent enough that most cold brew is diluted 1-to-1 before it's served. Drink it straight from the concentrate bottle and you'll understand very quickly why that step exists. Nitro cold brew takes that same concentrate and runs it through a tap system charged with nitrogen gas, exactly like a draft Guinness. The nitrogen bubbles are much smaller than CO2, which means instead of carbonation you get a creamy, almost velvety texture with a thick foam head and zero dairy involved. A 16-ounce Starbucks Nitro cold brew delivers around 280 milligrams of caffeine. Nitrogen also displaces oxygen in sealed kegs, which extends shelf life without preservatives. The whole concept is genuinely clever engineering applied to a coffee drink. Brewing methods next, because not every great cup of coffee involves a milk wand or a portafilter. Pour-over coffee was invented in 1908 by a German homemaker named Melita Benz, who was sick of the bitter, over-extracted coffee she kept getting from percolators. She punched holes in a tin cup, lined it with a piece of blotting paper from her son's school notebook, and poured hot water through ground coffee. The paper filter changed everything. It removed the oils in coffee called diterpenes, which are responsible for bitterness and, when consumed in large quantities, linked to cholesterol impact. The paper filter produces a clean, clear, bright cup, and Melita went on to found a company that still exists today. The Chemex pushes that concept even further. Invented in 1941 by a German chemist named Peter Schlumbohm, a man who held over 300 patents for everyday objects. The Chemex uses filters that are 20 to 30% thicker than standard pour-over filters. The result is one of the cleanest, most sediment-free cups of coffee you can make at home. The design is so elegant that it's been in the permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art in New York since 1958. A coffee maker. In MoMA. The AeroPress arrived in 2005, invented by Alan Adler, the same man who invented the Aerobi flying disc. The the frisbee-like ring that set a world record for farthest thrown object. Adler was frustrated with bitter coffee and designed a device that brews a full cup in under 3 minutes using a combination of immersion and gentle air pressure. It's small, nearly indestructible, wildly versatile, and has its own annual World Championship. The AeroPress World Championship has been running since 2008, with competitors from dozens of countries competing over who can brew the best cup with one. That is a real competition, with brackets and judges. The French press, despite the name, is not French. It was patented in 1929 by two Italians, Attilio Calamani and Giulio Moneta. The French press uses no paper filter, which means the coffee oils that paper would remove stay in the cup. That gives the drink a heavier, fuller body, but it also means those deterpenes stay in too. Studies have linked unfiltered coffee to modest increases in LDL cholesterol at high consumption levels. 1 or 2 cups is fine. Drinking unfiltered coffee by the pot every day is where research starts raising flags. Most people don't know that distinction exists. Drip coffee, the kind that comes out of the machine on your kitchen counter, is still the most common way Americans drink coffee. About 64% of American adults drink coffee daily, and that's roughly 400 million cups consumed domestically every single day. The electric drip coffee maker took over American kitchens in the 1970s, replacing stovetop percolators, and it hasn't really lost its grip since. Turkish coffee is something different entirely. It arrived in the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century, brought from Yemen during the reign of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. It's brewed in a small pot called a chesvi. Ultra-fine coffee grounds, cold water, and sugar are combined and brought to a near boil, sometimes twice. The grounds settle at the bottom of the cup and are never filtered out. In 2013, UNESCO officially recognized Turkish coffee as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The settled grounds are used for fortune-telling. An entire tradition called tasseography surrounds the ritual of reading the pattern left behind after the cup is drained and flipped. Coffee as prophecy. That's a level of cultural significance no other drink on this list can claim. Vietnamese iced coffee. Café Suada is one of the most satisfying cold drinks in the world, and its history starts with a single tree. Coffee was introduced to Vietnam in 1857 by a French Catholic priest who brought one Arabica tree with him. Under French colonial rule, fresh dairy milk was scarce and expensive, so Vietnamese coffee culture adapted by using sweetened condensed milk instead. The result is a thick, intensely sweet cold coffee drink brewed through a small metal drip filter called a fin, each cup taking around 5 minutes to brew, drop by drop. Vietnam is now the second largest coffee producer on the planet, behind only Brazil, exporting mostly Robusta beans, which have nearly double the caffeine of Arabica. From one tree to the world's second largest producer. That is quite a trajectory. Irish coffee closes the list, and it might have the most cinematic origin story of all of them. In 1943, a chef named Joe Sheridan was working at Foynes Air Base in Ireland, a transatlantic flying boat terminal where passengers were boarding flights to and from the United States. One night a flight turned back due to a severe storm, and the cold, exhausted passengers were brought back into the terminal. Sheridan made a hot coffee spiked with Irish whiskey and topped with cream to warm them up. An American passenger asked if they were drinking Brazilian coffee. Sheridan said, "No, that's Irish coffee." The drink came to the United States in 1952, introduced by a journalist named Stanton Delaplane, who brought the recipe to the Buena Vista Café in San Francisco, the same cafe where Joe Sheridan eventually came to work. Every Irish coffee you've ever ordered at an airport bar has a story that starts with a storm in 1943. Here's the thing that makes all of this so interesting. You've been navigating this world of 21 drinks your entire adult life, making choices mostly by vibe or by what sounded familiar. Now you have the actual map. From a single espresso shot to a Yemeni port city to a Wisconsin inventor's flying disc to a priest with one tree. Coffee is one of the most historically dense substances humans have ever consumed, and we drink 2.25 billion cups of it every single day without thinking twice. So here's what I want to know. Drop your go-to order in the comments right now, and tell me, now that you know what's actually in it, are you going to keep ordering it or are you switching? If this changed how you think about your morning cup, hit that like button and share it with whoever it was that first handed you a coffee and said, just try it, and make sure you're subscribed. Because next time we're getting into something that will completely change how you think about where your food actually comes from. And the answer is a lot stranger than you'd expect.